I haven't tracked a single calorie in the past 5 years, yet I've managed to get to 10% body fat with a ripped six pack and maintain it by using my metabolic reset system. And by the way, if you're looking for the full system, you can check out my program that is the link in the description below. So the mistake that a lot of guys make, including myself, is focusing on calorie intake and reducing how much you're eating in order to lose fat. Because when I first started out, I was skinny fat and I just hated having that lower belly fat, having those love handles that made me so insecure whenever I would have to take my shirt off. So my vision was that, okay, I'm going to stop eating so many calories. I'm going to restrict how much food I'm eating, and then I can lose the fat that's on my lower belly. But the problem with that was that I eventually got to the point where my calorie intake would have to be so low to the point where I was literally just starving myself in order to continue losing fat. Because what happens is when you stop eating so many calories, your body also starts to burn less calories at rest as well, because your body adapts to how much food you're eating. And so the only way to actually continue losing weight is by eating relatively lower and lower amounts of calories the further and further you go into a cutting phase. And what happens as a result of limiting your calorie intake so much is that you become hungry. You have no energy. You have no fuel going into your body to fuel your workouts. And as a result of that, you actually are not building as much muscle as you otherwise would be able to had you been putting more calories and food into your body. So what happens is, yeah, you might actually lose weight, but you become just emaciated. You look just kind of skinny. And what's the point of that when your goal was to be aesthetic, muscular, and lean? And what happened to me was that the way I was eating was so unsustainable because I was starving, because I had no energy, that eventually I just ballooned back all the way up to like 80 kilograms, fat again, because I just wanted to eat everything. So it was an unsustainable method of going about cutting fat. So what is the solution? The solution is adopting my metabolic reset system. And it's for guys who have exhausted all their fat loss progress by reducing how many calories they're eating and have now plateaued on weight loss or fat loss and are kind of just in that skinny fat stage where they still have that lower belly fat and their abs won't show. They're not completely obese like someone looking like this, but instead they just have that last bit of fat to get rid of. And you can take my client Jean, for example, who was looking a bit pudgy and just wanted to drop those last bit of fat around his lower waist area. And by adopting the system, he was able to actually see his abs in 90 days. So as I was saying earlier, when you want to lose fat, all the emphasis, all the focus, all the hyperfixation goes on reducing calorie intake. But it gets to the point, as I said, that you can no longer reduce your calorie intake to continue losing fat because it becomes unsustainable. So instead, you've got to look at the other side of the equation when it comes to achieving a calorie deficit. And that is by increasing your calorie expenditure. And there's two ways you can increase your calorie burn every day. The first is by increasing what's called your basal metabolic rate. And that is just the amount of calories your body burns by existing. So if you were lying in bed all day, your body would still burn an amount of calories just to keep you alive. And you can increase your BMR by adding more muscle to your frame and by training in the gym. And I'm going to assume you're already doing that. The second way you can increase your calorie expenditure every day is by increasing your active calories. So these are the calories your body burns by all the activity you're doing on top of the energy expended on keeping yourself alive. So this is things like going for a walk, being outside, moving my hands as I'm talking to you right now. These are all active calories. And the first, most effective way you can increase your active calories is by doing intentional cardio sessions. Now, I know it sounds scary. You hate doing cardio. You get that butterfly feeling of having to do cardio because it's so hard. But the cardio doesn't have to be hard. It's 45 minutes of low intensity cardio where your heart rate is around 120 to 140 beats per minute. And if you don't have a smartwatch that can track your heart rate, a good way to get an indication of if you're in this zone is whether you can maintain a conversation whilst you're doing the cardio. And if you can get into this heart rate zone for 45 minutes continuously, you will burn 500, 600 calories easily. Now, the key with doing this intentional cardio is that we want to get you to just be able to zone out and just forget about your doing this cardio in the first place. So for me, what I do is I will go outside, either for a walk or a jog. And because I'm outside, there's this thing called optic flow. So if you are moving through space and you can see objects go past you as you are moving past the objects, you almost enter this trance-like state where you're just focused on your thoughts. You kind of start daydreaming. And when I do that, I can just zone out and daydream. And the 45 minutes goes by like that. The other strategy that I like to use and I see is very successful is by doing things like the incline treadmill or the bike at the gym. And because you're doing it inside as opposed to outside, you don't get those same optic flow ability to just zone out. So you've got to look at other options of trying to zone out while you're doing the cardio. And you can watch YouTube. You can listen to music. You can listen to podcasts. You could read a book if you really wanted to. Now, you've got to find what actually allows you to zone out the most out of all of those options. And it might be something completely different to that as well. But what I've found is that if I just put in my AirPods and listen to techno music, I can just walk on the incline treadmill for 45 minutes, no problem. And again, I'm just thinking, I'm daydreaming, I'm lost in thought, as opposed to if I'm watching a YouTube video or listening to a podcast, I'm kind of in a concentration state. I'm in a focused state because I want to listen to the content that I'm looking at. And when I'm in that state of mind, being focused, I don't get that same ability to just zone out while I'm doing the cardio. And it makes it a lot harder to do. So that's why I prefer just listening to music while I'm on the incline treadmill. But again, it can be different for you. So you've got to find out what allows you to enter this zone out state of mind. And you might be thinking, well, I'm already doing weightlifting in the gym. Does that mean I have to go to the gym twice every day? And my response to that is, you're likely doing some bullshit with your day. If we look at your screen time, you're probably on TikTok. You're very likely on YouTube because you're watching this video. So you've got time. You're probably watching Netflix. You're doing some bullshit with your day that you could get rid of and instead replace with cardio. And I mean, you can even watch YouTube, TikTok, Netflix while you're on the incline treadmill. So there's simply no excuse as to why you can't get this extra cardio in. And if your excuse is, oh, I just don't have the time to be able to go to the gym twice per day, I want you to know that there is someone in the exact same circumstances as you, with the same job, with the same amount of free time. They have kids, they have work, they have studies, they have all these life responsibilities, yet they are able to fit in the cardio session and they have a six-pack and are at 10% body fat because of it. Because they were done with making excuses, whereas you are still in this limiting belief state of mind that you think you can't do it because you don't have time. When in reality, there's someone exactly like you that's doing it. The other way you can increase your active calories is by doing more general movement throughout the day. If you're someone at work and you get an hour lunch break, you could easily fit in that 45-minute incline treadmill or bike or run or walk into that lunch break. And you're getting your cardio in without actually sacrificing any more time because you were going to take your lunch break anyway. Now, the strategy that I like to use as a 9-to-5 worker myself is I will eat my lunch at my desk whilst I'm working. And then that way, it means that I can take a full 1 hour lunch break to either go for a run, go for a walk, or go to the gym and go on the incline treadmill. Whereas most people will take their 1 hour lunch break and spend, say, 30, 45 minutes literally eating. It doesn't take that long to eat. It takes 10 minutes maximum to actually eat if you're focused. And if you eat at your desk while you work, you free up all this time to actually get in more movement and therefore burn more calories. And you can also implement this general idea of implementing more movement into your life in other aspects as well. So if you have to go to the supermarket, you can just walk there as opposed to taking public transport or a car. When you're commuting to work, try and find the most amount of opportunities to walk. So I remember this friend of mine, she would take the train to work and then from the train station to her office would be about 500 meters. And instead of just walking that 500 meters, she would take the tram, which is a form of public transport. And it's like, it takes the exact same amount of time to cover that 500 meters, regardless of whether you walked or took the tram. But if you walked, you're getting more steps in, you're burning more calories. And so you just need to make this mindset shift of trying to implement walking at any opportunity you can get in your day-to-day life. And one of those examples is when I had to deliver documents to another office whilst at work. So most people would just take the tram down the street, and that might be 5-10 minutes. Whereas I would walk intentionally, trying to get more calorie burn in so that I can stay lean. And it literally takes the exact same amount of time. It might take a tiny bit longer, but just by doing that, it all adds up. You can also just walk in between the sets that you're doing at the gym. And let's say you add all of that up and you've done an extra 10,000 steps in the day because you're trying to implement walking wherever you can. That's an extra 300 to 400 calories you've burned. So the reason why the metabolic reset system works is because if you implement both of these things by increasing your active calories, you burn an extra 800 to 1,000 calories per day. And just think about how effortless fat loss is if that is your calorie burn now. You don't have to think about limiting your calorie intake. You don't have to think about limiting your portion sizes. This is the way I've lived for the past year or 2 years. I've never tracked my calories. I don't even think about having to limit how much of a certain food I'm eating because I just burn so many more extra calories. What it does is give you freedom in your eating. And that freedom in your eating that allows you to intake more calories, more protein, actually gives you more fuel in the gym to build more muscle and engage in the muscle protein synthesis more effectively. It gives you more energy whenever you're in the gym to train hard. And most important of all, you're not hungry because you're allowed to eat an extra 800 to 1,000 calories, but still drop fat at the same time. So if you've made it to this far in the video, I know that you know the metabolic reset system works. But the only issue is that you struggle with accountability. And if you're looking for that accountability, check out my program in the link in the description below, where I have a group of guys who are all on this path. And I will personally make sure that you stay dedicated to this path. So if you enjoyed or learned anything from this video, please consider subscribing. We're getting to 20K subs soon, and I will see you in the next one.